All right, so good afternoon and welcome to Talk's latest webinar, Uncork Additional Revenue. We're excited to have you join us. My name is Melissa Maciejewski and I'm part of Talk's account management team. I've been with Talk for the past 4 years now, but prior to that, I've had over a decade of experience working front of house and managing reservations in both casual and Michelin-starred restaurants. For those joining us that aren't familiar with the Talk platform, we were built by restaurants for restaurants and wineries, offering the perfect blend of technology and hospitality. Whether you're booking last-minute tours of your vineyards, debuting a reserve wine tasting for your club members, or promoting a one-night-only collaboration event, Talk makes booking easy and ensures that service runs smoothly. Think of Talk as an all-in-one platform that showcases whatever your business does best. The purpose of today's webinar is to share a conversation about hospitality, but focused on the unique needs and considerations of the wine industry. You'll learn some key information about what it takes to promote and operate a winery or a tasting room straight from the source. So, including how industry trends affect what guests are looking for in a tasting room experience, and how to capitalize on those trends with your marketing efforts. We'll discuss best practices for converting wine tourists into repeat visitors or even wine club members. And as always, we'll hear some success stories. What kind of events or promotions have both maximized sales and created those loyal supporters of your brand? Now, before I introduce today's panelists, I want to call attention to the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Throughout the webinar, feel free to add any questions you have, and we'll be sure to save some time to address those at the end. Now, very pleased to introduce today's panelists. Amira McKenzie is the Digital Marketing Manager at Stoller Wine Group, and Don Davis is the Director of Sales and Marketing and a Brand Director at McCrosty Winery. So thank you both for joining us today. I was thinking about my experience with wine, and I certainly have never done anything like work harvest before, but I've spent enough time around sommeliers to know that everyone is fascinated by people who have, developed careers within the wine world. So I wanted to start off just by asking you to introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about, what led you to your current position. So Amira, we'll start with you.
Yeah, perfect. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be here with you, Melissa, and what a great place to start the story, because for those of you in the audience, Melissa and I know each other going way back. We did mock trial together at the University of Chicago, which is actually the same time that I discovered and first got into wine. So I was at the time contemplating a career in the legal field. And I had the opportunity one summer to go to France and work in the Côte d'Ivoire region. It was supposed to be a harvest season, but harvest kept getting pushed back and back. So it ended up just being Amira cleans every tank in this 30-year-old winery setup. But it was a really special experience. I got up every day and watched the sunrise over this 12th century medieval castle, ate quiche for lunch and drank wine for lunch, and was just completely wowed by the whole experience. And I was like, why would I go into law when I can do this? So I completely changed my career path. Ended up graduating in 3 years in order to advance my career in wine more quickly, and did my first harvest at Benton Lane Winery in Oregon, actually, where I then subsequently fell in love with Oregon. I remember seeing the Cascade Mountains along the way and was just totally wowed by the fact that there could possibly be snow-capped peaks in the background. So did my first few harvests in Oregon, traveled around a little bit, and then eventually landed a full-time job in production in the Paso Robles region of California. Worked there for a few years, worked up to assistant winemaker, and then ultimately transitioned into the sales and marketing side, landed pretty firmly in a wine club and the digital marketing space. So that's where I've been ever since, and that's what brought me to Stoller Wine Group.
Yeah, it's been a minute since college, but I like to
don't tell them how long, Melissa. Don't tell them how long.
Fair enough. I think our I like having mock trial as a hobby and wine as the career. That's a good move. All right, Don, how about you? How did you get to where you are now?
Sure. I'm a Northern California native, but I do have a Chicago connection. I knew that if I didn't leave California, for college. I would never leave it. And sure enough, I went to school in Northwestern, just to the north of Chicago, and then came right back. And at the time, I was surrounded by Silicon Valley and technology, and so I started my career was in software and technology industry. But after about 5 or 6 years, while it was a very exciting industry, I didn't personally love it. So I actually just wrote a list of all the things I love to do most in life and things I enjoyed most. And I don't remember if wine was number one or number two. It was one of those, but I was determined to work in wine and found an opportunity at a company that was kind of at the intersection of technology and wine at the time. Later went on to work at wine.com. Then I had the entrepreneurial phase of my life with Uncork events, a wine-focused event planning company in San Francisco, as well as I owned a wine bar, as well as a gastropub in San Francisco for 8 years. But then had enough of the entrepreneurial phase and had an opportunity to join McCrosty, which was at the time a 27 or 8-year-old winery distributed all over the country, but with no DTC business. So to oversee the build out of a beautiful new winery and tasting room and start the DTC business from scratch. And that was in the beginning of 2015. And so I've been there for 9 years now.
Excellent. I would like to dive into a little bit more specifics about your businesses. So Don, obviously you've been with McCrosty for quite some time. Could you share maybe some of the experiences, events, or offerings that they've done while you've worked with them?
Yeah, well, I just kind of take a step back that when we were building out our plan for launching our direct business, we knew that we certainly had a beautiful tasting room, but there's a lot of other people do too. We knew we had beautiful wines, but pretty subjective. A lot of others do too. So we really staked our claim from day one, and still absolutely to this day, on leading with hospitality first. Everything is hospitality driven. Everything is experience driven. People don't remember the specific wines they had. They remember how you made them feel while you were at the winery. And like to talk about when people arrive at our winery, we want to make time stand still for a couple of hours, and whatever the worries they may have in their life, they're not worried about anything else for a couple of hours. And also, it's when people are coming to visit you, that is their vacation time, whether it's vacation for an afternoon from San Francisco or they're visiting for the week from Florida. It's their vacation, and there's nothing more important than someone's vacation. And it's up to us to create really memorable experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we think about wineries being very separate from restaurants, but they are all the hospitality industry, which is about creating experiences. So, Amira, is the approach similar at Stoller?
Yeah, very much so. I think we can echo almost everything that Don said as far as, trying to create a space where people can relax, trying to honor their vacation, trying to really front and center that hospitality experience and create memories with folks. We really want to be front and center of people's minds when they think about Oregon. And so that, trying to build wine into the Oregon experience has very much been a part of Stoller's DTC platform from the beginning. And it's really been beautiful to see the Oregon wine industry rise over the last few years. So a couple of interesting things about Stoller in particular. So we have 3 different tasting locations that we manage. One of them is Stoller Family Estate right here on the property. And then we have a sub-brand called Chehalem, or I shouldn't call them a sub-brand, actually. They're truly a brand in their own right. That one is Chehalem Wines. They were kind of founded around the same time, and they have their own tasting room space it's an urban tasting room in the city of Newburgh. And then then we also have a Stoller wine bar in the city of Bend, which is across the Cascades in Central Oregon. So 3 different tasting spaces that we manage. And then we also have 5 brands that we manage. So Stoller Family Estate, Chehalem Wines, Canned Oregon, Stoller Swing, so yeah, and then history as well. So several different brands that we're managing, and several tasting locations. And Talk really kind of helps us oversee all of those and bring them together under one cohesive, unified house, so that we can expand our hospitality operations and offer different experiences, but always with that same hospitality soul at all of our spaces.
I was curious, I'm glad that you both brought up the fact that visitors are sometimes on vacation. What proportion of your guests would you say are tourists versus repeat guests? And how does that affect, kind of the way you promote your offerings?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, go ahead, Don.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just going to say we get approximately half of our guests from California and half pretty equally spread out all around the country, and that kind of reflects itself too in our membership programs end up being about half California, half around the country. One of the things that's interesting that I think that we have done is we know that for all the local members or local visitors, they can take advantage of all the wonderful events that we do at the winery or in our local area at local restaurants and that sort of thing. But our customers or our members that are located throughout other parts of the country, they don't get the opportunity to take advantage of those events. Or at least very often. So what we've done since 2017 is choose about 4 to 6 markets a year where we go into those markets and we host events for our members and customers, really fun 70, 80 person events at cool venues and showcasing our smallest production wines and let them know that, we're thinking of them and we know that they can't come and visit us, more than once a year, or maybe the one time they're ever going to visit Sonoma. So we bring our experience to them, and we obviously can't be everywhere, but we choose markets with our most customers or members, and we do some rotations of those. That's just kind of one interesting thing we do to keep connected to our members and our customers around the country.
Are those members only events, or is the goal to bring new people, in as fans of the brand as well?
So typically we market these events to members first, and if they fill up with our members, then they fill up with their members. If there's some extra room, then we will invite our customers in the area, but generally we'll allow our members to bring guests too, so they can, we've signed up a bunch of new members that way. I said, what is this all about? This sounds great, sign me up. So that's it's been a little combination of the two.
Great. And then how about you, Amira? What sort of events outside of just standard tastings are you offering?
Yeah, so we have obviously, the pandemic shifted things for a lot of people. And I did want to share a few numbers around that just to kind of give people some context. So I looked up some numbers from Travel Oregon this morning, and some really interesting things came to play. So first of all, in 2017, the average income of folks who visited Oregon was about $85,000 a year in household income. In 2021 and 2022, that number shot up to $120,000. So demographic shift on an extreme scale there. And then also in 2017, about 16% of visitors who visited Oregon then subsequently decided to visit the Willamette Valley in the context of that trip. In 2021-22, that number was more than 35%. So Oregon travelers who then choose to come to the Willamette Valley for wine tourism has more than doubled over 5 years. So we're really seeing a lot of changes, in part driven by changes to tourism habits during the pandemic, and then also driven by the rise of Oregon wine in general. So within the context of that, we have started doing at Stoller some really kind of diverse offerings. We have some club events that we do every year, twice a year for our wine club members, and those are member exclusive events with the intent to reward members for being members, encourage retention, and then just provide them something really fun to thank them for their most recent wine club purchase. We also do some club exclusive dining events, food and wine pairing dinners, often kind of located around a theme. We did a Thai dinner, Thai and Riesling. We also did a Cuban dinner this year that was really fun. Those are often club exclusive offerings. And then we have some sort of larger offerings. So this past March, we did a National Cocktail Day event, just themed around National Cocktail Day. And we offered a lot of wine-based cocktails. So some sort of fun, like tongue-in-cheek things like that to just keep things really fresh for our, both for our members and for folks who might be interested in Stoller but not be club members. So those might be open to the public as well. And then also to kind of keep things interesting for people who may have visited Stoller several times, we want to offer a diversity of experiences as well. So we have 3 kind of standard experiences that are offered at Stoller throughout the summer. And part of the reason they're offered throughout the summer is because at least one of them is very weather dependent. So we have a standard tasting experience. We call that a classic tasting in our heritage tasting room that can be inside or outside. And then we have this really gorgeous space that we call the Stoller Lawn. And it's a very casual experience, walk-up bar. We like to kind of think of it as like cabana bar vibes. And folks can just walk up, do tastings, get their glasses, get their bottles, and then sit in these beautiful white Adirondack chairs and look out over the property. So that's our lawn experience. And then finally, we have an elevated tasting that features some of our more reserved, limited production wines, and that's called our legacy experience. So that is something that's really fun to offer during the peak season so that visitors who may have been to Stoller once, twice, even 5 or 10 times, always have something fresh and new to try if they've had our other more standard offerings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was excited to speak to both of you since you work in marketing, because I think you touched on what I assume is one of the problems in the wine industry is that it's hard to differentiate yourself. You know, obviously people, when they go to Willamette or Sonoma, they know the style of wines that work well there and maybe hitting, you know, multiple wineries, multiple tasting rooms in one trip. So how do you set yourself apart? And I think with your space and maybe with some of those unique experiences, that certainly helps. But any other ideas? How are you trying to really define your brand?
Yeah, I can kind of take the lead on that question. I think for us here at Stoller, it comes down so much to storytelling. So we're very lucky here that Bill Stoller, our founder and proprietor, he grew up here in Dayton, right here on this property and just down the street. So he has like many years of connection to this place. And then he purchased the property and began turning it into vineyards in the early 90s. And so the family connection to this estate goes back a very long time. Bill was also an early investor in the Willamette Valley wine industry. That's how he is connected to the Chehalem story as well. So that's how those 2 brands come to be unified under the same roof. And what we like to do here at Stoller is really tell the story of the family, of the wines, of the place, and how all of these things came to be in this one estate. So I think that helps create, you know, coming back to the idea of creating memories, it really helps people connect with the place, create their own stories around the place. And, you know, true to form, we have club members who have been members for well over 10 years with us and have no intention of leaving that we know of, you know. So really beautiful how you can build those long lasting connections with guests when you center everything around story rather than around something abstract like lemon peel in a wine, or, you know, whether a wine tastes like blueberry or blackberry, you know.
Yeah, we were having a conversation earlier about speaking about wine, and one of my colleagues said there are only so many times that you can just describe the soil. So thinking about other ways to connect with people. I'm sorry, Don, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that you know, one thing that is very kind of a core part of what we do is learning as much as we can about the guest, pre-visit questions and notes we have in them and their customer record, and Yeah, that information is all shared. The hosts have it. Our ambassadors, that's our wine stewards, our ambassadors are the ones who host tables. Well, they're provided often with a great degree of information of where the guest is from, how many times they've been there, how they were referred. There's a special occasion for the day, what they're hoping to get out of the tasting. And these are things that we also, when we're confirming reservations, we also try to get as much information about the parties, and then fill in the blanks when as soon as they arrive. So if we don't know where they're from or how they found us or what they know about us, before we just start telling a story about the winery, get to know them first. Why are they there? What are they hoping to get out of the day? What do they know about us? And then tailor the experience from there. And we have different flight choices, but we really often kind of use those as a guideline. Where if many times people will just say, "Hey, this flight, that sounds great, I'm good," right? But a lot of people will say, "Well, I really prefer lighter body Pinot Noirs," or "You know what? All I want to taste today is white wines." And that's not a flight, right? But we create the flight on the fly every time. And that can be by each person at that table too. So we think that's really important in leaving a lasting impression, is that we've listened to each and every guest. We know as much as we can about them, and we've tailored and personalized the experience to them. The other thing too about the storytelling is, we know if it's a member and they've been there, a dozen times, they don't need to or want to hear a whole brand story again. Now, if they have some friends for the 10th time, right, they don't need to hear the history of a certain vineyard over and over again. Now, if they have some friends with them that are there for the first time, we'll make sure to tell our core story. But we'll make sure we say, members, this year we've released for the first time this wine. It's not on the menu, but it's not in any of your shipments. I want you to taste it. And doing things like that instead of just telling the story and running through a standard flight. I think those are the kinds of things that we do kind of day in, day out to make us memorable. And there's nothing more important. We said this from day one. We still believe it to this day. There's nothing more important than word of mouth in our business. And we certainly use a variety of advertising and marketing channels. You can't pay for word of mouth, but you can set yourself up for word of mouth. And there's nothing, again, nothing more important than than what your best friend who you trust, as where they've told you should go and visit.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to sort of continue on that theme of personalization, because especially, utilizing pre-visit questions and doing a little bit of research about the guest prior to them coming in has come up in a few different webinars. So I think it applies to so many different types of hospitality businesses. But Don, of course, you mentioned the events in other cities and then doing some of this research, but are there any other benefits or customization tactics that you use for your valued members to keep them really engaged and referring other people?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly pre-visit, we are really good about not just we're looking into purchase histories and stuff, right? So we can already tailor experience or already know some things to talk about. But beyond that, we through our digital marketing efforts, we do, or we also have an outbound phone sales team, and we'll really kind of do real slicing and dicing of our database to create lists of customers for certain campaigns for email or our phone sales that are, we are only calling people because they have purchased at least 2 cases of single vineyard Pinot Noir in the last 12 months. And they're the only one, from, this region. And we know that the offer we're going to have for them is probably going to resonate with them, where it might not resonate at all with another big subsection of our list. So we certainly do a lot of personalization when it comes to our email campaigns and our outbound phone sales team campaigns.
Amira, do you sort of slice and dice similarly? Are you looking at that?
Yeah, we do. We definitely like to look into customer history. Actually, we have a fun thing that we do where one of our management level team before every busy Saturday and Sunday service will go through and take a look at the club members who are visiting that day and put in the talk visit notes what wines they are likely to purchase, what wines they have purchased recently, so that if, say, we have a new vintage of a wine out that might not have been, as Dawn said, included in their allocation, we can then have the ambassador pass that information along to them, ask them if they'd like to try it, if they'd like to add it to a couple bottles to take home with them today. So getting that deep into that integration of customer purchase history with the hospitality factor is really key in driving upsells and increased revenue within the tasting room. We do similar things also as far as call campaigns and outbound sales. We actually have an in-house outbound call team, or we call them our concierge team. They're responsible for fielding all of our phone calls inbound for all 3 locations, and then also for executing call campaigns around wine club season and at other dedicated times of the year as well. And really have to shout them out. They're amazing. It's definitely a solid business decision to have dedicated people in-house whose job it is to answer the phone, because there's really nothing like that personal connection as well. So just knowing that when you have a question or a problem about your wine club shipment or about an upcoming reservation, you can quickly and easily get a hold of somebody and talk to an actual human is really such a unique experience, I think, in this day and age, actually, when we're so used to phone trees and menus and all of that. And then in addition to that, we also like to make good use of the visit tags and the guest tags. So for example, all of our wine club members, almost all of them have some kind of tag associated with their profile, whether it's, vegetarian or 10-year member or has a dog, just so that we can best anticipate those needs to the greatest extent of our ability, to the extent that our tasting room team recently shared with me that they're actually trying to collect the names of any club member who brings a dog into the tasting room. They're then trying to collect the name of that dog and add it to the guest's profile, so that the next time it's not like, hey, what's your dog's name? It's like, hey, Max, how you doing? And so just getting really, really personal with it, and taking advantage of all of those features that Talk gives us. I personally think about Talk not just as a reservation system, but actually as a deeper CRM system where you can really use it to capture so much information about the guest and then use that to maximize sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those personal touches are so important, and not just during the experience, but like you said, if they're calling into support or if they're communicating about their reservation, you want all of that communication to be consistent with the experience itself.
Shout out to Talk. I know we were amongst the earlier wine clients in 2018, but coming from the restaurant world where I used other systems, they were really crafted exclusively for the restaurant world, and I spent literally years trying to find a solution that would meet the needs of a winery, and it was so wonderful that Talk decided to make the focus on. I can't imagine a winery using any other reservation system. To be honest, it is so. I'm so glad that you've spent the effort to do the customization to make it really awesome, as awesome for wineries as it is for restaurants. And nobody else has really done that to any great effect. Also, that your system is integrated with both WineDirect and Commerce7, which are the 2 kind of largest wine software systems, has been really beneficial for us too. So there's only there's no duplicate contacts. It's one central database for us, and that's very, very helpful too. I did see a question come in actually is along those lines about gathering customer information.
Yeah, please.
And building the database and how we go about that. And it's for us, there's almost nothing besides providing exceptional hospitality experiences. There is like nothing more important than gathering customer data and people that visited, getting their information. Obviously, if somebody has made a talk reservation, well, we have their basic information there that is synced to our customer database. For the people that are with those, the people that have made the talk reservation on site and that have visited, if they make a purchase, automatically we basically 99.9% of people that make a purchase, we collect their email, mobile and phone, and we just as part of the process, so we can email your receipt and be able to communicate with you in the future. For the other people though that are at the table, oftentimes a couple might buy wine, and it's the significant other is the one who actually pays attention to emails. But if they haven't been the one that makes a purchase, so how are you going to get their email address too? So one of the things we've done for about a year now is we have a QR code on our menu, and it's also printed on these like slate coasters on the table. And basically that we provide a $200 gift certificate in a drawing each month for anybody who enters their basic info through the QR code. And we get a couple hundred additional names a month. So 2,000, 2,500 people that have visited, we are your best potential future customers whose data we wouldn't have had otherwise, right? And these are about a couple thousand. That's on top. That's are people that weren't the ones that made the purchases. So those are already in the system. They just they can enter. But we don't. If we're just counting just incremental, a couple thousand a year that way. So that's one thing we do. And the other thing I would say too is every single event we go to, where we're pouring our wines, we do probably 50, 60 events a year around the country, a lot of them in California, or they're pourings at local hotels. We have a sheet where you provide your name and email address, and you have a complimentary tasting for 2. And we really judge the success of our events on the road. Yes, there's certainly some good branding opportunities. It's great to make the personal face-to-face connection, but we really judge a lot of the success on how many names and emails we get at each event. And we follow up with an email after every single event or tasting within a couple of days saying, thanks for tasting with us at blank event. Here are the wines you tasted. Here's your code to to enter on talk for a complimentary reservation for 2. Or here's a code for complimentary shipping on your first order. And so that's kind of just one way we look at a couple ways that we have had great success in collecting data.
Yeah, those are fantastic ideas. So thank you for sharing. I do want to jump into some of the questions that have come in from the audience because they're active today. So one for you specifically, Amira, people were curious about how you price your tastings and specifically whether Stoller Club members pay for that elevated tasting you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the way I would answer that is with a caveat that, pricing is always changing, especially here in the Willamette Valley. We have seen prices rise pretty significantly over the last 3 to 5 years. So we are on the very low end of that with the potential, I would say, to just, anything that I say right now might change in the next year. With that said, currently our classic tasting is priced at $25 each, and that is a 5-wine flight. That flight is waived for club members. Naturally, they get a certain number of complimentary tastings per guest when they visit. And then the elevated tasting is not waived. I have to double check my notes on this with the tasting room team, but my understanding is that the tasting is not waived if you are a club member, but the price is reduced by a certain amount. And I think that's equal to the value of the classic tasting. And then club members, of course, receive their discount on all of the wines that would be purchased.
And for both of you, do you have different membership levels, or is that streamlined?
Yeah, I'll start. We certainly do have different membership tiers. Currently, at both Stoller and Chehalem, we have two primary membership tiers. Stoller has a third tier also called Legacy. That's really for our highest end wines, people who want access to those most exclusive, most limited production bottlings. But the bulk of our club is located in the Weathervane Flight, Weathervane Club, and then the Heritage Club. So Weathervane, they're both 2 shipments a year. Weathervane is 6 bottles and you receive 10% off. And then the Heritage is 12 bottles twice a year and you receive 20% off. The tasting benefits are also different, and the shipping benefits are different as well. So we offer a couple tiers with the goal to encourage people to sign up at that Heritage level. That's really intended to be kind of like the workhorse club, the one that most people want to join. It has the kind of like the most well-rounded benefits, I would say. And then you either go up or down from there, depending on your preference for those more exclusive wines, or if you're really just looking for a couple of casual tastings a few times a year. So people can kind of self-select into the experience that they're looking for.
Great. Don, question for you. One of our attendees was curious about this custom flight experience that you described. So it sounded like you weren't advertising it as a custom flight, but maybe employees had some freedom to, pour things based on guest preferences. And how do you manage that just from an operations perspective?
Sure.
How much leeway do you give your staff to do what they want?
Well, a couple things. Especially it's not kind of a totally unlimited set of choices. Most people are going to have, part of one flight with maybe a couple of changes, and we have a couple of extra Chardonnays available, a couple of extra Pinot Noirs, and things that we can make interchangeable to customize at any given time, because it's not really operationally a great idea to have 30 different wines open and at a given time. With that said, a longtime customer or member, and they really want to try something, and then we have it on site, and they make the request specifically for it. We'll open it and then we'll just pour it out for other people to make sure we don't waste much of the wine. But again, we're in the business of we're in the hospitality business, right? We're in the business of saying yes. Mm-hmm. And I think that and even if we can't say yes always to something somebody wants, we find a way to say yes to something very close to it. And so we're still saying yes. So that's that. And in terms of, I won't go through our club levels and our tasting levels, but everything, we're very similar to what Amira mentioned, that way. But I think the main thing for us is we waive, members get a certain number of complimentary tastings, but if you're not a member, you have a tasting fee waived with the purchase of any three bottles. We didn't want to make it a number, dollar amount, just any 3 bottles, keep it simple. We'd rather, if we at the end of the day we collected 0 tasting fees for the year, that would mean we were selling a ton of wine. Right. So that's that was a number that works for us, and one that we work to, and we hope people like our wines enough that they want to purchase at least that and get their fees waived.
Yeah, absolutely. I liken both examples that you gave in terms of collecting guest information and getting guests to purchase wine rather than tasting fees. You're being really explicit about what your goals are rather than, just trying to engage in any way whatsoever. I do have a couple follow-up questions about staffing that I thought were interesting. So, we talked about collecting guest information and even getting that into talk in some way. Do you have a dedicated concierge team or reservationist, or who's managing that sort of data?
We have
Yeah. Go ahead, Don.
We do have a guest services team who is our customer service team, who field a lot of the calls and emails in advance. But on the day of, we are set up very much like a restaurant. We have our host desk, which we have between 1 and sometimes up to 4 on a Saturday hosts. We have our busser team, much like you would at a restaurant, allowing the ambassadors to really focus on the guests and making sure that that the tables are cleared and reset very promptly. The sooner we do that, the sooner we can get more new guests in there. Plus, we just want the space to look really, really immaculate at all times. So we've invested a lot of money in our overheads and our people by having this slate of hosts and bussers and our ambassador team. But we think that it's kind of a requirement, to operate with the level of service that we have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Have to chime in there. Absolutely. We're very much the same. We staff our tasting room in a similar manner to how you would expect a restaurant to be run. We have our main level service team. We have a managerial team on hand to support in any capacity and offer guidance and leadership. We have a full culinary team. We have a support team as well, bussers, clearing tables, fulfilling orders, keeping everything nice and tidy. And then at the door, we have a host team as well that's also collecting information. And I would say that that is one of the #1 priorities, is to make sure that all of that information is really kept clean and up to date. Again, capturing the name of that dog, making sure that if they need special access, then that's recorded in their profile, getting that first name, last name, email address, phone number, all of that stuff, and getting it really accurate is such an important aspect. So having all of those components in place in your tasting room is really critical to the future success of the business. I would also just add real quick, I know we're a little short on time, but one of the unique challenges of a tasting room is that you have to operate in 3 different business capacities at once. You're a retail sales space, you're a subscription sales space, and you're a restaurant if you offer any kind of food service. So really 3 different business models coming to coexist in a single space, and managing all of those at one time presents its own unique set of challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, we hear from restaurants all the time that it's so easy to overlook the importance of a good host. But obviously a bright smiling face at the front door is important. And when you consider it from that guest management or guest data management perspective as well, if they can do both, that's ideal.
I mean, absolutely. So critical.
Let me just see if we have any additional questions that I want to touch on here. I do want to just quickly touch on some additional marketing questions that came in, because again, I know that this is both of your specialties. So when you are launching a new concept winery or tasting room, do you consider the segments of guests differently? So club customers versus new audiences.
Well, I can say that if we're speaking specifically about launching a new location, as in like opening a fully new space, I haven't really been a part of that here at Stoller, so I can't speak with precision to our historical practices, just having not witnessed it. But I can say that knowing and targeting your audience is absolutely so critical. We will be going through this process soon with one of our wine brands, which is going to be opening a different tasting space. So when that happens, we sort of understand already, even before that process has really begun. We know that those audiences, the people who go to our urban, sort of more, the tasting space that already exists, and then the people who go to the new space that we're opening, are going to be 2 defined segments. And so trying to target those, understand what those people are looking for, ask the right questions, and then even sort of design the space around their wishes and intentions is really very critical process for us. So at the beginning of this year, we sent out some surveys to all of our club members for each different club that we have at each brand. And I think that is like a critical part of the data management process, is to gather information and customer feedback from your club members, from your most loyal customers. And that's something I actually have not seen done before at past companies that I've worked for. So I would unequivocally recommend it. You get some incredible data. A lot of it is very raw and requires a lot of sorting through. It's not so much on a numerical scale, just people's thoughts and feedback. But then from there, you can really build targeted, customized segments around those people, people who maybe have had great experiences, people who felt that something was missing, people who really need some remedial attention, and then you can really dive deep into how to meet those people where they are and deliver what they're looking for as a result.
I like how both of you have touched on this idea that when you're looking for data, you can just ask for it, either ask for feedback or ask for contact information. There's no reason why you can't do that.
Absolutely.
We after every guest who visits are automatically sent a short questionnaire that takes them minutes to fill out, and we get a pretty good percentage of people filling those out, and we're getting almost real-time feedback within a day or two of them visiting, and we respond to as many of those as we can. And that's just another way for our guests to know that we're listening and we pay attention, and their feedback's important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we are approaching the end of our time together, so I want to wrap some things up. There were quite a few questions that we were unable to get to. So for those of you who asked a question and didn't see it answered, our team will be following up via email. We will also share this recording of the webinar to everyone via email as well, so you can share it with colleagues, rewatch your favorite parts, whatever you need. Thank you so much to Amira and Dawn for sharing your valuable insights and experience today. And of course, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. We hope you're inspired and leave today's discussion with some great takeaways. If you are attending and not on Talk's platform and would like to learn more about pricings or offerings, please go ahead and visit exploretalk.com/join. So thank you so much, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.